Good afternoon. Today is the 27th of September, and it's time for yet another not particularly interesting, very vague, and probably quite boring vlog. So I was going to record a video about a different topic this week, but something happened yesterday that I thought was actually very important for many of us, and so I decided to talk about something different. I have a client who I've known for many, many years, and I've actually sourced two cars for him, one in 2021 and one in 2024. Last year, I got him a 2014 Suzuki SX4S Cross from London Prestige in Essex. It's the same car that appeared on the channel in about sort of February, March 2024. It was that actual car. And he needed something at the time to replace his 2015 Suzuki Swift that was too small for his expanding family. So he picked it up. I think he's only done 6,000 miles in it since. And he came to me because he's eventually going to be getting a new car because apparently the family's expanding again. And so the SX4S was too small. But also he's just had it serviced and MOT'd, and the garage came up with this extraordinary list of things that actually apparently needed to be done, but I'm not 100% convinced that they needed to be. And he said that I need some new front brakes and pads and discs, which I was like, well, that's normal, isn't it? He said, yes, but they've quoted me for that, or some other things. They've quoted me £340 to do the front brakes. And I said, what? And he said, yes, £340. So we had a look, and it was a load of things. It was like, you need an engine flush, you need a coolant flush, you need a fuel system treatment, and etc., etc., etc. I said, are you sure about all this? And he said, yes, that's what they've advised. I said, well, can we take a look at this list and see what it is? And I was obviously alarmed at the cost of brakes, but also they were going to charge him £65 to put some fuel system treatment in, which I know, and many of you know, is that you can get something like, I don't know, Red X or something similar for about £12 if you put it in yourself. You don't need to pay somebody £65 to put that in. You can do it yourself. But it went on like this. It was like, you know, the coolant flush was like £62, and the pollen filter was £82 or something like that. It was just an extraordinary amount of money for all these extra things. In total, it's £810, all this advised work. So I asked Mr. Coleman, a rubbish mechanic, who works on all our cars, whether there could be something done about this. And of course there could be something done about it. What actually happened is that he went through a list of all the bits which they'd advised to be done to the car, and he found out that, well, how do I put this? A lot of the work wasn't ever necessary. It was far too expensive. I'm just going to go into the shop viewers, and we will go over some of the figures that he found for the various parts for which the garage in southwest London was going to charge quite a lot of money. Right, viewers, we've purchased our comestibles, and we'll be back on the way to the hotel where we're staying in Milton Keynes for the British Leyland Autumn Rally. So the list of things that was advised to work, obviously the brake discs and pads. Now that is completely normal because the car actually did have an advisory on the MOT for discs and pads, which is fine. But £340 for just the front discs and pads seems a bit much. Next, we've got the tracking that was advised. Now that again is actually fine. I don't know when the tracking on that car was last done. It drove fine when I last drove it, which was about sort of May 2024, but who knows what's happened to it then. And the car lives in London, so there we go. Next, we've got the engine flush, coolant flush, fuel system cleaner, pollen filter. So the total for the work was £810, which just seemed like a lot of money to me. Mr. Coleman and I had a little discussion on behalf of my client, and I said, Mr. Coleman, what should we do? £810 worth of work. You know, even if the garage is charging £90 an hour for labour, which these days isn't unusual for a garage in southwest London. And bear in mind, this is an independent garage. It's not a franchise dealership, it's not a specialist, and this is a normal car. It's just a normal 2014 Suzuki SX4 S-Cross with the 1.6 chain-driven petrol engine. It's not even direct injection or anything. There's no turbo, so nothing of that nature. So Mr. Coleman then looked at his supplier, a similar supplier to where presumably they've already got the parts, and he said, well, fuel system cleaner, that's £11.99. Coolant, that's £25. The pollen filter, which has been advised, is £21. And, you know, you don't technically need that. You don't technically need the engine flush, really. It's not a direct injection engine or anything like that. The one thing you do need is the tracking, actually. That's a pretty good price for tracking at about £85. But, you know, pollen filter, £85. Fuel system cleaner, £65, I think it was. And then, you know, engine flush, like same sort of thing, about £62 or anything like that. You don't really need much of that, particularly because your client's actually selling the car. Like, there's a certain amount, obviously, he needs to do the brakes. He probably would get a bit more money for it. He did the tracking, stuff like that. But the fuel system cleaner, he could do it himself. Pollen filter, he could do it himself, can't he? Someone's making an awful lot of money on this out of some of the work that's not even necessary. Obviously, I'm not expecting to do the coolant flush. It's a bit more complicated, things like that. But if he can put a bottle of Red X in the fuel filler, you save himself some money. If he can work out the pollen filter, he can save himself some money, and some of that stuff's not necessary. So I said to my client, I said, can you find somewhere else to get the brakes done? Because even if we're talking a garage that charges £90 an hour for labour, which actually a place like that might do, they're sort of charging you over 2 hours of labour, because the parts of the brakes, disc and pads, Mr. Coleman found, Mr. the Brembo, they're not cheap ones, were £94. So they're charging a labour rate of around £240 for fitting, just fitting, not the parts, the labour, £240. Unfortunately, he did find somewhere that was a bit cheaper than that. I'm very blessed to have, you know, Mr. Coleman and Mr. Partridge, who do a lot of the jobs on the cars for me, and so I know exactly what they're actually buying the parts for, because sometimes I buy them for them. If not, they tell me what it is. So I'm very blessed to have people like that who are reliable to work on our cars for us. And, you know, a lot of people don't have that luxury. They don't have it. But to be charged by your normal local garage, who you've used for many years, like exorbitant amounts of money for doing stuff. I appreciate London rent's expensive, appreciate staff costs are expensive, things like that. But that does seem to me to be quite extraordinary from that point of view. So, you know, just make sure before you start servicing your car and being charged exorbitant sums of money for quite basic work, some of which is unnecessary, just sort of shop around and see what happens. Anyway, thank you ever so much indeed once again for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video and leave a comment below. And we shall see you again very soon for some more surprisingly kind of pertinent consumer advice.